Utah's Zion National Park, as it is currently called, was its first national park and the most visited of all the Utah's national parks. There's a little saying on the website. I liked it, so I'm going to repeat it for you. A bajillion years ago, ancient iterations of the Virgin River started wreaking havoc on southwestern Utah. Now there's a faint "you're welcome" echoing through the canyons of Zion National Park.
So if you ever wanted to see something that comes from a bajillion years ago, Zion's your opportunity. The next thing that we ended up doing was to figure out what we were going to do was make a stop at the Zion Visitor Center. But the merchandise section was in full bloom. So if you wanted to browse the books, browse the souvenirs, posters, postcards, shirts, paraphernalia.
And if you're like us, you want to get that good old stamp for your national park's passport.
That's the first thing that I did when we went in there.
You ran to that one.
Yeah, so I have my little National Park passport book, and that's always my first order of business. As soon as I walk through the doors of the park visitor centers, where's the darn stamp? So I got my stamp so I can prove to myself later in the future that I actually was there. And then we got some information about what we could do on day one, and we learned about some of the hiking options, and there happened to be a trail that started just at the visitor center, and so we would end up taking that. But there's also several trails with round trip times of anywhere from a half an hour to 4 hours that are in the park. There's a network of trails that totals 50 miles that connects Zion's northwest corner of the park to its southeast section. So lots of hiking trails if that's something that you like to do, and that's what we opted to do on our day one. But we started with probably one of the easiest trails that there are in the park.
We started with the Parouse Trail, which was right next to the visitor center, across the street from it. We had plenty of time, so we were off on this trail that was very easy, very casual trail. It's walking right next to a river there, so that was quite pleasant to walk by that.
Virgin River?
Mm-hmm, Virgin River, yeah. Very easy. It's 3.5 miles round trip, and the elevation only changes about 50 feet.
You can just spend time, aside from the hiking, just admiring the scenery, lots of wildflowers. You got the river, the mountains.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. At that time of year, it was just gorgeous. So we continued on this hike, and it stops at Canyon Junction, which is the split that leads up to the Narrows. And it's a road, a paved road. So we decided we were going to go a bit further, and we started walking up this road towards the Temple of Sinawava, but we didn't quite get as far as the Temple of Sinawava. At that time, the road was closed to traffic. There were cars occasionally coming up and down as they probably were leaving the parking lot, and some cars were allowed to come in. The walk was a great viewpoint for some of the highlights in that area too.
Okay, we're walking up the scenic highway at Zion. That's closed because they're already at 450 cars.
By
6:10.
It just opened, 6:10.
Yeah, they open at 6 a.m.
People lining up by 4 a.m.
We're approaching the Court of the Patriarchs on this road that is mainly closed, so most people are hoofing it as they keep this limited to 450 in the parking lot, and then they close the entrance. So we're making a bit of a walk up this way.
As we were walking, of course, you're walking along these gorgeous mountainous ranges, and again, the colors that just come popping out at you are great for photograph moments. But we came to a viewpoint called the Court of Patriarchs, and at that point, after snapping a few photos, we decided to turn around.
Yeah.
And we walked back down the road and got back to the trail that we first started off, the Parouse Trail, and back to the visitor center. So it took us about 3 hours to do the whole thing.
Yeah, so after that, we decided that we were going to see what we could of Zion for the rest of the afternoon by our truck,
Yes.
which came in very handy on this trip. One of the things that we passed through was what's called the Zion Mount Carmel Tunnel. So if you are coming through the park from the east entrance, you are absolutely going to go through this. If you're coming through the other entrance, I would highly, highly recommend continue up the road to experience going through this tunnel, because it is one of the greatest engineering feats of modern times. It is spectacular.
So I had noticed this hole pretty much in the middle of this enormous mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what it was. And I thought maybe a cave. But I'm like, how can a cave be up that high? But I guess it could if it was weathered.
But
I don't know.
It looked like a man-made hole.
It looked man-made. I thought maybe they tried to make some kind of roadway or something through that area and failed. I didn't know.
That's what I thought first. I thought that it was an initial attempt, that it was a fail, and then they just left this hole in the side of the mountain.
Yeah, until we passed a little information plaque on the side of the road, and we read exactly what that was, and it was this Zion Mount Carmel Tunnel.
Yeah, so there's actually 4 of these shaftways or kind of windows into the tunnel. So the tunnel itself, it's 1.1 miles long, and when we passed there early in the morning, traffic was going both ways, but by the time we were going through the tunnel later in the day, the park rangers would close off traffic, so it would only be going one way at a time. And that actually, I thought it made driving through it feel somewhat safer. You didn't have to feel like you were hugging the side of the road like we would have been in the morning. And once Zion became identified as a national park in 1919, now you had the interest of people who wanted to explore the place, but you couldn't really do that without a road. So ultimately, a 25-mile stretch of road would be developed that would connect Zion to the Grand Canyon and Bryce Canyon, but there were some big challenges to get the road completed. One of those being this massive amount of mountain that engineers had to figure out. Either you have to get around, or in this case, they had to make their way through the mountain. So in the 20s, the end of the canyon appeared to be a dead end, and highway engineers came up with a solution, which was to create a mile-long tunnel behind the cliff face. So work on this highway, on the Zion Mount Carmel Highway, began in 1927, and they started making these small shafts that you mentioned into the cliff face, and then those are still visible today. So when you're driving through the tunnel, you'll come across every now and then, you're driving, it's dark, and then all of a sudden there's like a peak of sunlight that comes through, and that's the hole in the side of the mountain, and there's 4 of those. The tunnel was completed in 1930, and then that allowed the area to be open for motorized tourism. And so from 1930 until the present day, if we have access to a motor vehicle, we can travel through the tunnel, down the road, and enjoy the immense beauty that is Zion Canyon National Park. So it took us 3 minutes and 13 seconds to get through the 1.1 mile long tunnel. But yeah, if you're into engineering marvels and spectacles, this is one. Just amazing. That's the Mount Carmel Tunnel, very famous, one piece of this scenic drive in Zion.
Mm-hmm. We continued our drive after we came out of the tunnel on the Zion Scenic Drive. This was our main driving route in and out of the park over the next few days that we were staying there. We were staying about 20 minutes east of the park in a town called Glendale, Utah. If you're thinking about staying in Springdale, which is the other entrance to the park, we would still recommend that you take the drive at least until the park entrance on the east side to view some of the amazing vistas, the mountainside, the changes that you see as you're pivoting around these turns.
And to get from the one entrance to the other entrance, the road isn't all that long. So if you're going to be in Zion anyways, I mean, just take that time to make the entire drive because it's just beautiful.
Yeah, we really, really recommend that if there's a safe place for you to turn off, take a look at the view, take it all in. It's so magnificent.
And there's places you're going to want to get out of your car. We're at a turn off heading out of Zion. Some really interesting land formations over here. I think somebody called it the frozen sand dune, so perhaps that's what this is, but we'll show just a bit of this area.
We were passing an area called the Checkerboard Mesa.
Mm-hmm. It just looked super interesting.
It looked interesting.
Right?
Yeah, it was a really nice place to pull over, walk a little bit. It was very accessible by foot. And it was this area that they said look for mountain goat on this checkered board kind of maze thing that was on one of the mountainsides.
Yeah, it kind of looks checkerboard.
It did. It looked checkerboard. It was it was super interesting. So you were driving, you weren't able to really take a look. I'm watching, and all of a sudden I see something on the side of this mountain, and for sure enough, they were mountain goats.
Yeah.
Little bit about Checkerboard Mesa. It was originally named by Preston Patro, who was the third superintendent of the park. Named for the hill's horizontal cross bedding, which is what we were seeing, of the ancient sand dunes and vertical cracking due to the expansion and contraction of the sandstone during the winter. So it caused all this cracking within this sandstone to where these goats in their specialized hooves can actually walk across. It looked like nothing that they were, it looked like they were just going to slide right off.
Yeah.
But because they have specialized hooves, they're able to grab onto these small areas, these grooves that were within the sandstone. So it's pretty amazing.
We had pulled over in our truck in this area and just did a little exploration. I remember there was a group of people, I think there was like 4 people, who had set up their chairs on the top of this large rock type of area and just enjoying lunch. And man, if you think about a beautiful place to have a lunch, just to, pull over to the side of the road in Zion National Park, get your chair out there and just sit and admire the view and eat a sandwich or something that you bring along with you. These people had the right idea. I think we had a little conversation with them.
Yeah, very nice
Or
people.
you did.
Yeah.
And then, again, looking at some of the photos that we took in this area, the rocks looked like these sheets of rock. It was just very unique looking.
It's all sandstone. It's very interesting.
Yeah. If you enjoy geology, different formations, I think both of us probably could have spent even more hours just walking around and taking photos and looking here and there and neat areas. Yeah, the other thing, when I think about what we saw, and we've mentioned it a couple of times so far, is just kind of, this magnificent color that you see in this park. I think about Zion is only about an hour away from Bryce. So distance-wise, they're fairly close. But when I think about what we saw in Bryce versus what we saw in Zion,
completely different.
Totally different.
Completely different. You must see both parks.
Yeah. Zion just struck me as, I keep thinking about words like majestic and awesome, and one of those places, like many national parks, that you can see pictures and videos that you flip through a book or you watch something on TV, but being there in person is just a completely different experience for me. Thanks for watching this video. We hope you've seen some things that'll help you plan your future travel adventures.
And if you like this video, please hit the subscribe button and like us. And if you have any comments, we'd love to hear from you.
And until next time, keep on traveling, and we hope to see you at the places where we go.